They left her to burn in the sun. When I first saw her, the German Shepherd dog had pressed herself flat against the blistering asphalt, her body stretched wide to shield 3 tiny puppies. The shade of a rusted truck barely covered them, and the heat waves rising from the road made the whole scene shimmer like it wasn't real. But it was. She wasn't moving for herself. She was moving for them. Her coat, once black and tan, was dulled by dust, and her ribs showed sharp with every breath. The puppies were no more than 2 months old, little scraps of fur that nosed blindly at her belly. Their whimpers were weak, almost lost in the roar of trucks from the highway nearby. She licked their heads, one by one, as if each touch could buy them another hour of safety. I crouched down on the edge of the asphalt, the heat biting through my knees. I didn't call out. I didn't reach. My hand trembled around the bottle of water I carried. I knew if I made the wrong move, she might bolt, and those puppies would scatter into the deadly heat. So I stayed there, breathing as steady as I could, letting her see that I wasn't another danger. Her eyes fixed on me, dark, heavy, ancient with worry. She didn't growl. She didn't show teeth. She just stared, daring me to cross the invisible line between her and her pups. Behind her, one tiny German Shepherd puppy shifted, pressing deeper under her flank, his body quivering. The other 2 lay curled, chests rising fast, fighting the heat. The truck above them creaked, metal ticking in the sun. She lifted her head, ears flicking, but didn't move her shield. Sweat ran down my back. Every second stretched too long. I could see how fragile they were, how close to collapse, and I knew the next step had to be mine. I slid my hand a little forward, the water glinting in the sun, not to force her, only to offer. My throat was tight, my chest heavy, because if she turned away now, if she decided I was no better than the ones who had left her there, I might lose all 4 in a single breath. And so I froze, caught in that silence, waiting for her choice. Her eyes never blinked, but her body shuddered when I uncapped the water. I poured a thin stream into my palm and set the bottle down, careful not to let it clang against the asphalt. The German Shepherd dog lowered her head, nostrils flaring. She didn't move closer right away. She only nudged the first puppy forward, a shaky little ball of black and tan fur that stumbled over her leg. He pressed his nose into my hand, lapped once, then twice, before collapsing back against her side. The second pup tried next. She steadied him with her muzzle, pushing him toward me like it was his turn at something sacred. His tongue was dry as paper, each sip a scrape more than a swallow. When he finished, she pulled him back and tucked him under her chest. Only then did she lean in herself. The German Shepherd's tongue flicked at my palm, not greedily, but with measured care. Her body still blocked the smallest puppy, the one curled against her ribs. I could see that one's sides heaving too fast, his breath shallow, eyes barely open. I thought about reaching, just to touch him, to be sure, but her gaze snapped back to mine, hard as iron. She wasn't ready to let me that far. The air around us smelled like hot tar and dust, and every sound from the highway punched through the silence. Sweat slid down my jaw, my legs cramped from crouching, but I didn't move. I couldn't. The line between us was thin, but it was holding. She licked the last drop from my hand, lifted her head, and studied me. The shade under the truck was shrinking, sunlight creeping closer to the pups. The smallest whimpered, a frail squeak that cut me deeper than any growl. I knew I had minutes before the heat claimed him, and I also knew I'd have to earn those minutes from her. The truck groaned above us, metal shifting as if the whole thing might collapse. The German Shepherd dog flinched, pressing her shoulder tighter around the 3 puppies. Dust shook loose, and the sunlight knifed closer to their bodies. The heat had no mercy, and she knew it. She lifted her head, ears flicking, and for the first time I saw hesitation, a question flickering behind those dark eyes. I eased back onto my knees, slow and deliberate, and reached into my pocket. All I had was a thin rope I'd used earlier to tie off a gate at the shelter. I dragged it across the ground with 2 fingers, letting it slither in the dust like a harmless toy. One of the pups, the sturdier male, twitched awake. He blinked, lifted his tiny nose, and wobbled forward, following that faint scrape of rope. She tensed, but didn't stop him. Her chest rose sharp and fast as he pawed at the rope, tiny claws scraping against the asphalt. I didn't touch him, not yet. I just let him edge into the space between us, his tail a trembling stub. When he pressed his side against my shoe, I held my breath. The German Shepherd's eyes never left him. Then, as if making a choice only she could understand, she nudged her nose against the second puppy's back. The little girl rolled over and followed, clumsy and blinking. My heart was hammering. The smallest one was still pressed against her, too weak to stir, his body sinking deeper into her warmth. I whispered, useless words but steady ones, letting my voice fill the narrow space under the truck. She shifted, weight lifting just enough for air to pass between her belly and the last puppy. It was the smallest surrender, the width of a breath, but it meant everything. That was her answer. She was giving me a chance. She counted them with her eyes, over and over, as if afraid one might vanish between heartbeats. By the time I slid the crate door shut in the back of the van, the German Shepherd dog had already checked each puppy twice. She nosed the boy against the girl, tucked the weaker pup beneath her chest, then swung her gaze back to me. No sound, no growl, just a stare that told me she was keeping score. The road out of Irwindale shimmered in the noon heat. I drove slow, one hand on the wheel, the other gripping the edge of the crate, as if I could steady their whole world by touch alone. The puppies whimpered at every bump, little voices thin but alive. She shifted her body to cushion them, muscles braced against every jolt. I whispered names, not official yet, just sounds to fill the silence, soft syllables that might one day belong to them. The German Shepherd dog watched me through the wire, ears forward, head tilted as if testing each sound for danger. She didn't rest. Even with the hum of the van and the rumble of the road, her eyes stayed open. The San Gabriel Mountains loomed hazy on the horizon, a pale ridge against the sky. I told myself that was hope, that maybe this family of 4 could make it past today. But the air inside the van was thick, heavy with their smell, dust, fur, sunburned asphalt, and fear. At every stoplight, she shifted again, counting with her nose, touching each pup in turn. 1, 2, 3. Again, 1, 2, 3. The smallest pressed his face into her belly and barely stirred. My gut clenched with every shallow rise of his ribs. When the shelter came into view, white walls, chain link gleam in the sun, her ears flicked back. She didn't know this place. She only knew the sound of the latch when I reached for it. And in that moment, I realized she might see me as the next one who takes everything away. She wouldn't touch the bowl until the pups did. Inside the shelter, the clang of kennels echoed like metal thunder. The mother German Shepherd dog paced the concrete run with her head low, her tail curled protectively around the 3 puppies pressed into the corner. Each clang of a gate, each bark from another dog, made her body tighten like a coiled spring. When the tech slid a dish of food and water inside, she only stood guard. Her ribs quivered. Her eyes locked on me. She didn't move until the first puppy, the strongest little male, waddled forward and sniffed at the food. The moment his tongue touched, she lowered herself, nudged the other 2, and finally began to eat. I stood by the clipboard, trying to steady my hand. "They'll need intake names," the woman beside me said, pen hovering. It felt wrong to give them labels like numbers. So I spoke softly, more to the dogs than to her. The mother first, Rhea. Something ancient, steady, strong enough to carry the weight she bore. Then the pups. The boy who had found my shoe under the truck, I called him Rook, a name that felt sharp and watchful. The quick little girl with the restless paws, Lark, light and darting even in fear. And the smallest, the one whose breaths had almost slipped away, Mica, because even the smallest stone can still shine when held to the light. The pens scratched their names onto the form. The shelter doors clanged shut behind me. And when I looked back through the chain link, Rhea had settled on the floor with all 3 German Shepherd puppies gathered against her chest. She had names now. They all did. But names didn't promise a future, only a beginning. Her stare told me everything before I even touched the kennel door. Mica was too still. The smallest German Shepherd puppy lay half buried under his sisters, his sides rising fast and shallow, each breath too thin. Rhea had pressed her muzzle against his tiny body, refusing to move as if her warmth alone could drag him back. Her eyes cut into me, hard and pleading, the look of a mother who knows she can't fix what's breaking. I slid inside with the vet, the clang of the latch making the other dogs bark down the row. Rhea didn't growl. She didn't lunge. She only hovered, every muscle trembling as we lifted the little pup into my arms. His weight was feather-light, his tongue dry as paper against my wrist. We set him on the exam table, the room humming with fluorescent lights and the distant echo of barking. The vet slipped a needle into a vein, fluids dripping slow, steady, like borrowed minutes. I held the pup's paw against my thumb, whispering useless words just to fill the silence. Rhea stood at the door, chest heaving, watching through the glass panel, her eyes refusing to leave him. The minutes stretched. His breathing rattled, then smoothed, then rattled again. I couldn't unclench my jaw. I wanted to promise him something I wasn't sure I had the right to say, that he'd be fine, that he'd grow into a strong German Shepherd dog like his mother. But the truth sat heavy in my throat. Sometimes even love isn't enough. At 2 a.m, the pup twitched his ears and let out a thin, high squeak. The sound cracked the air like a spark. I felt Rhea's body lean against the kennel door, pressing closer, her nails scraping metal. The vet nodded, not smiling, just nodding as the fluids kept running. We laid him back with his mother and siblings, and she gathered all 3 under her chest, licking Mica until his fur was slick. She didn't rest. She wouldn't. Not until she was sure he was breathing steady again. And even then, her eyes stayed open in the dark, as if she feared closing them would steal him away. A sound broke the silence that didn't belong in a shelter. Soft, high, almost like a laugh. Morning light filtered through the narrow windows, striping the kennel floor in gold. Mica stirred first, the weakest German Shepherd puppy, lifting his head just enough to bump into his sister. Lark squeaked, stumbled back, then spun in a tiny, clumsy circle. The noise she made, it wasn't fear, not hunger. It was play. Rhea froze. For days, she had been stone, muscle, and vigilance, but now, her ears tipped forward, her eyes wide, as if she didn't believe what she was hearing. Rook hopped sideways, landing against the water bowl with a splash, and for the first time, the heaviness in that kennel cracked. I came to the gate, with a length of rope I'd picked up the day before. A volunteer had passed me a Petco gift card, and I'd used it to grab something simple. Nothing bright or fancy, just sturdy and safe. I slid it under the bars. Lark pounced first, her tiny teeth tugging, her tail a shaky flag. Rook grabbed the other end, growling with a voice too small to scare anyone, except maybe his sister. And then it happened. Rhea lowered herself onto her elbows, chest flat to the ground, eyes never leaving mine. She nudged the rope with her nose, pushing it back toward the pups. It wasn't surrender. It wasn't trust. Not yet. It was something else. Permission. Mica crawled forward, weak but determined, latching onto the rope with a bite that barely held. He shook once like he wanted to prove he was still part of this game, part of this family. His mother's eyes softened, her tail brushing the floor, a slow sweep I hadn't seen before. The sound of their play filled the row. Thin squeaks and tiny growls mixing with the usual chorus of barking. Other dogs pressed against their gates to watch. Even the staff paused as they walked past. It was small, fragile, like glass held in trembling hands. But in that moment, it was hope, and I knew, once hope takes root, it doesn't let go easy. Families came, but none for them. Saturday brought the footsteps, the voices, the careful glances down the kennel rows. I stood back as strangers bent to look inside Rhea's run. The German Shepherd dog rose every time, ears up, chest lifted, her body angled just enough to show the 3 puppies huddled close. She wasn't begging. She wasn't performing. She was showing the truth. They were a family. Children squealed at the younger dogs. Couples pointed at smaller breeds, tails wagging like feather dusters. One man asked if Rhea was too old. Another wanted only 1 puppy. A woman said the mother looked too intense, her eyes too sharp. Each time I felt her hope flare and collapse, like a match blown out before the flame could catch. The pups pressed to her side as people passed, their tiny bodies weaving under her legs. Rook barked once, a brave but thin sound. Lark wagged furiously at a toddler's hand pressed through the gate. Mica stayed low, resting his chin on his sister's paw, watching it all. Not one person signed their names. Not one stopped long enough to ask what this family had already survived. By late afternoon, the hallway thinned, the echo of shoes faded, and the only sounds left were the tired barks of dogs settling into another night. Rhea circled her pups twice before lying down. She licked each one, pulling them tight against her chest, and lowered her head to the concrete. Her ears didn't rest. They twitched at every distant door, every passing voice, still listening for the one sound that might mean this day had been different. But the doors stayed shut, and the kennel lights dimmed. They were still here, 4 shadows behind chain link, waiting for a chance no one had given them. Ash floated down like gray snow. The wind had shifted overnight, pushing smoke from the San Gabriel foothills into the valley. By morning, the shelter air carried the faint sting of fire. Dusty particles clung to the chain link and drifted across the kennels. The German Shepherd dog lifted her nose, nostrils flaring, and pulled the 3 puppies tight against her belly as if she could block the smoke from reaching them. Staff moved fast, checking clipboards and shouting updates down the hall. "Be ready to load," someone called. The crackle of the radio spilled through the building. A brush fire had jumped the ridge, no longer miles away but closer with every gust of wind. The younger dogs barked and spun in circles. The older ones pressed against the walls. Rhea didn't bark. She didn't move. She crouched low, covering the German Shepherd puppies with her body, just as she had the day I found her under that abandoned truck. Her eyes never left the door. Every sound, every slam, made her muscles stiffen, ready to rise if anyone tried to separate them. I crouched by the gate, my throat dry from smoke, and whispered names through the bars. Rhea, Rook, Lark, Mica. Each head lifted in turn. Even Mica, still fragile, pushed his face up from his mother's chest. The ash settled on his fur like freckles. I brushed it off with my finger, and he sneezed, the tiniest squeak against the roar of alarms in the background. Trucks rumbled in the lot outside. Carriers slammed shut, one after another. Volunteers rushed down the rows, latching doors, shouting numbers. Rhea stood now, tail stiff, pressing the pups between her legs. Her gaze followed every movement, reading the chaos as danger. The order came quick, sharp over the radio, "Stand by to move." And in that instant, I knew this family would only survive if I could keep them together. We had minutes. The hallway shook with the thunder of carriers being wheeled toward the trucks. Dogs barked, voices shouted over each other, the air thick with smoke drifting through the vents. I sprinted to Rhea's kennel, heart hammering. The German Shepherd dog stood tall over her 3 puppies, her chest rising like a barricade. She knew what was coming. The cages, the doors, the separation. Protocol said each animal had to go alone, 1 per crate. I saw the stack of empty carriers waiting, the tags already clipped to the doors. 3 for the puppies, 1 for the mother. 4 cages, 4 locks, 4 rides to who knows where. My gut twisted. I knew if they were split, the fragile thread holding them together might snap. Mica wouldn't last alone. Rhea wouldn't stop fighting. I knelt, slid the largest crate I could find to the gate, and unlatched the kennel. Smoke curled through the open door. Rhea didn't bolt. She didn't growl. She lowered her head and touched each puppy with her nose, then looked straight at me. I lifted Rook first, his little paws scrabbling against my shirt, then Lark, wriggling, squealing. Finally, Mica, light as air, trembling, his chest fluttering against my palm. Rhea followed, stepping into the crate on her own, curling her body until all 3 pups were pressed beneath her chest. Her tail wrapped them like a rope. I slammed the latch just as another volunteer shouted, "We're out of time!" The row was already half empty, cages clattering into trucks. The radio crackled with orders, fire at the ridge, embers spotted near the road. The crate rocked as we lifted it, 4 lives inside moving as one. Rhea's eyes never left mine, even as the smoke swallowed the parking lot. Her gaze said everything. If this crate held, if we kept them together, then they had a chance. The truck door slammed, the engine roared, and the family's world shrank to 1 crate, 1 lock, 1 gamble against the fire. Sunlight poured through the windows before the noise returned. By the time we rolled the crates back into the shelter, the fire had been held. The air still smelled of smoke, but the panic was gone. One by one, the dogs returned to their runs, metal doors clanging shut like punctuation marks to a night that had nearly erased us. I carried their crate last. When I unlatched it, Rhea stepped out first, her body stiff from hours curled around the 3 puppies. She shook once, ash flaking from her coat, and turned back to nose them forward. Rook scrambled out boldly, tail up like he owned the floor. Lark bounded after him, ears too big for her head, tumbling into her brother. Mica hesitated, then stretched a paw past the threshold, blinking into the light. Rhea circled them twice, counting, touching, confirming. Then she led them in a slow line down the run, 4 shapes moving as one. It looked almost like a parade, her head high, their paws tripping after hers, every step fragile but together. Other dogs pressed against their gates to watch, a silence falling as if even they recognized what this family had survived. When I settled them back into their kennel, Rhea sank to the floor, pulling the German Shepherd puppies close. She licked Mica's face until he sneezed, then tucked him beneath her chest. Rook gnawed at Lark's ear, tail wagging. For the first time since I'd found them under that truck, the space around them felt less like a cage and more like a refuge. But the truth burned as sharp as the smoke still lingering outside. No one had chosen them. Not one visitor stopped. Not one family asked. They were still here, Rhea and her 3 German Shepherd puppies, waiting in the shelter, pressed close, stronger than ever but unseen by the world. And until someone walked through that door, they would keep waiting, a family holding on to nothing but each other. If you've come this far, you've met them. Rhea, the German Shepherd dog, and her 3 puppies, Rook, Lark, and Mica, are still here in the shelter. No one has chosen them. Day after day, families walk past, and still this mother dog presses her body around her pups, guarding them as fiercely as the first moment I saw her under that truck. They don't know rejection the way we do. All they know is that they are together, waiting for someone to finally see them, not as 4 behind bars, but as a family. This little guy's journey from abandonment to rehabilitation shows how important nonprofit rescue groups really are. Caring for a rescued puppy is more than love. It's responsibility. It's pet care. Every share, every comment, every hand that helps spread their story gives them a better chance at finding the home they deserve. If this story touched you, don't let it stop here. Share their story and be the reason someone new walks through those doors and sees them for who they are, a mother and her pups who never gave up on each other. And please, write a comment below. Tell the world what Rhea and her puppies made you feel. Your words keep their hope alive and help more people discover their story. Join our brave Paws family. Be their voice. Be their hope.